Hello, everyone. Hello, BCCBians. This is Mesba, and I am with Nathaniel. For those of you that have been following BCCB from its early days, we know that Nathaniel, or Nate as we call him, has been a good friend of the Bangladeshi Canadian community. He is a member of parliament for Beaches, East York. Is that right, Nate?
Right? That's right.
Right, and
Right.
we have seen him, at all our festivals, whether it be Eid or some other cultural festival. So he is a very well-known, familiar face with us. And today I have him on because uh, he is actually running to be the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. And the Ontario Liberal Party is one of the three main parties of Ontario, and they have been in government before the current government was in place. So we have a couple of questions. We have actually five questions that I want to discuss in detail with him. Before that, I just want Nate to give a brief introduction to those who already don't know you in your own words.
Well, first, thanks so much for inviting me. I've been a Liberal member of Parliament, as you say, for 3 elections now since 2015, and representing Beaches East York and a large Bangladeshi community. I was the chair of the Canada-Bangladesh Friendship Group for many years as a result. And right now we have a huge opportunity. Just like 10 years ago, the biggest opportunity was to make a difference was in federal politics. We have the biggest opportunity today in provincial politics. The Liberal Party is in third place provincially, just as it was federally 10 years ago. And we need that same generational and grassroots renewal. And so there's a huge opportunity. And my ask of everyone listening, and you'll hear some questions and answers, but my biggest ask is before September 11th, that everyone joins me in becoming a member to vote in this process and to help us deliver the leadership, to shape our party, and to rebuild our party and province.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Nate, for taking the time out. I know you have a very busy schedule, but let's go directly to our questions. And I'll give you some time at the end also because people are interested to know how they can join the Liberal Party, the Ontario Liberal Party, and uh, select you as their leader. The first question is actually on the minds of everybody in Canada, but also in Ontario, and that involves healthcare. Just to give a brief intro, I mean, everybody knows, many of us, especially those who have lived abroad, we are not used to places where we are waiting 8 hours, at the emergency room, 10 hours, 12 hours. Um, since COVID, it appears that healthcare in Ontario seems to have gone downhill. Um, if you are the leader of the party and should you become premier, how would you address healthcare?
So it's a great question because healthcare is the most important responsibility of the provincial government. And you're right, since the Ford government took office, emergency wait times have increased. And we actually see some emergency room closures in some parts of this province. And what do we need to do? There are 5 things in our healthcare plan. We announced it this morning alongside newly elected MPP Karen McCrimmon, who's joined our team. And the first thing is it's a health human resource crisis. We don't have people that are making enough. We don't have the working conditions that we need to attract and retain healthcare professionals, nurses, PSWs, doctors. And so it's a staffing issue. Why are emergency rooms taking so long? This is access to family doctors. 2.2 million people don't have access to a family doctor. That's another reason, by the way, that the wait times are so long in emergency rooms, because if people don't have access to a family doctor, the only place that they can go then is either a walk-in clinic or the emergency room. And so we need to make sure we widely, rapidly expand access to family health teams. And to do that, we need to make sure we are graduating more doctors here in Canada. We are opening up residency spaces, but we are also ensuring that doctors from countries back home, including in Bangladesh, who come to Canada and do their examinations, that there are residencies available for them, and we rapidly credential people and recognize credentials from foreign countries. Third, we need to make sure we address mental health. And so we've proposed something similar to the UK, where there will be up to 12 hours of talk therapy that is covered by OHIP. And we know from the UK experience, up to 50% of anxiety and depression cases are managed in the UK with up to 12 hours of talk therapy. It can make a huge difference, save money in the system overall. Fourth, we need to make sure that we address aging of seniors. We see an incredibly large growing seniors population, and we need to make sure we support caregivers who are looking after our seniors, family and loved ones, caregivers. We also need to make sure that we deliver home and community care. No one wants to move to these big institutions. Doug Ford brags about the number of beds he's building, but they're in large institutions where no one wants to live in. And so we need to make sure we obviously deliver national, we adopt the national standards for long-term care and we deliver better standards and care there, but we also invest in home and community care. And the last thing I'll say, and healthcare is a big topic and there are lots of things we need to do, but we need to make sure we focus on preventative healthcare as well. And that means the social determinants of health and housing in particular and income security in particular, but it also means preventative healthcare. Most chronic diseases are because of lifestyle choices in many cases. And so you look at the way we eat, you look at our physical activity levels, and we need to make sure that we, as one example, there's better education in our school system, but there's also healthy food in hospitals, quality food in long-term care, and quality food in our school system.
So, I mean, we recently had a panel with a couple of healthcare staff, including doctors, and they actually brought up the point that, people are not eating healthy enough. So diabetes, for example, is very common in the South Asian community. The other thing they brought up is Bill 124, I think. So do you think that had an effect on the healthcare in Ontario?
There's no question it did. And for those who don't know what Bill 124 is, it capped wages not for police officers, not for firefighters, but for nurses. And the real challenge there is twofold. One is we are not going to attract and retain people in the public system if we don't pay them well enough. They can make money by going to the United States. They can make money by going to private nursing agencies that end up charging back to the taxpayer, and the taxpayer pays more money than if we'd paid nurses to begin with. And so it's a cost challenge on the one side. The other challenge, though, is just about respect. That if people are feeling disrespected in their profession, you are not going to attract the best and brightest to that profession. And so Bill 124 unquestionably had a detrimental impact. The Ford government's fighting it to keep it in court. They're going to lose. It's going to be repealed. If I were there, it would never have been an issue in the first place, and we would have repealed it immediately. But I'll say it's about pay in part. It's also about working conditions, and we have to make sure that there's respect. But there's also, look at family doctors. Very few people, if they have the choice between becoming a specialist or becoming a family doctor, are choosing to become a family doctor. Partly it's about pay. Partly it's they don't want the headache of running their own small business and the administration and the paperwork. So we need to make it much more attractive to work in a family health team setting and to ensure doctors are doing the jobs that they want to do, serving patients, and not doing that administrative, paperwork and the headache that they don't want to do.
Right. Now, I'm sure we could discuss healthcare for forever, but let's move on to one topic that, especially in our community, in the Bangladeshi Canadian community, it causes a lot of discussion, and this is the LTB, and both from the tenant side and the landlord side. So many people who come as new immigrants, they live, basement apartments to start with, and nowadays rent is very high, but they are also not aware of their rights as tenants. On the other side, we have landlords who have tenants that don't pay, and it takes a year to move to LTB and get rid of tenants that are not paying. So both sides, the good landlords and the good tenants, they suffer. A tenant whose landlord is not, fixing things, to go to the LTB, it takes 6-7 months to, get basic stuff done. Similarly, a landlord who has a non-paying tenant, they lose tens of thousands of dollars, and interest rates are high and all of that. So why is LTB in a mess, and how would you think you can fix it?
Okay, so the LTV is in part in a mess because of a resourcing question. And we know that it can be better resourcing and it can deliver better results because in Alberta, for example, it takes 2 to 4 weeks for a matter to be heard and turned around and dealt with. Here it takes 6 to 8 months, if not longer. And that's, as you say, it's unfair for tenants who are being dealt with unfairly by slum landlords. It's also a real problem for landlords who are being taken advantage of by tenants who are not paying, and they should be paying. And so we do need much faster timelines. We should be adopting, more of an e-tribunal setting. I was a lawyer before politics, and I know there are jurisdictions, I mentioned Alberta, BC has adopted a much faster e-tribunal system for smaller matters, and it's much faster for everyone involved, and it's much easier to access for many people involved. And so there are small changes that we can do on that front. We absolutely need strong tenant protections to ensure that landlords don't improperly say that family members are moving in and evict tenants, that landlords respond to repairs in a timely way. And so obviously tenants need not only access to the LTV, but we need better legal aid resources in many of those cases. But on the flip side, if tenants are not paying, and that's a very simple case. If they're not paying, and a landlord is then unable to afford their mortgage as a result because those payments are not coming in, there need to be hearings incredibly quickly and evictions on that basis. So on both fronts, we need faster hearings and the LTB to be properly resourced.
Right. So I can understand why tenants need more protection because of there is a certain power imbalance on that fact. Most of the situation in Ontario seems to be the lag. Like if things were heard much faster, like I have heard, some friends who want to invest in real estate, they are going to Alberta rather than Ontario and hiring a manager over there rather than, investing in Ontario. So do you think it's actually costing us in that way?
It is unquestionably costing us both on the tenant side in terms of a matter of fairness, and it's because unscrupulous landlords know that it's going to take 8 months and tenants can't defend their rights, and it's also costing us in terms of the impact on landlords. There's no question about it. Now, I would say on the landlord side, when it comes to rental, we need more rental, but we need more rental to be built. And I think we do need every rule at the provincial level should be incentivizing when investment does come into the residential resale market. It should be encouraging new landlords and investors to be adding density, whether it's basement suites, whether it's a garden suite. We should be making sure that every incentive is lined up to add density because we need more housing. We need new investment to build on the rental side, of course, and we need when investors are coming in the residential resale market, they should be adding secondary suites as much as possible.
All right. So so as you said, LTB seems to be a staffing issue. So let's hope when you become premier, you can fix it. I'm going to move to a topic that's some debate. It's transit, and I'll tell you my own case. Like that's one of the ways Premier Ford has actually benefited me. I live in Whitby, and making the bus free if you connect to the Go has been beneficial because I don't have to depend on my wife to drop me to the Go station, and if you have to go 3-4 times a week, it's a lot of money to be saving. In the last election, the Liberal leader, he proposed some transit plans to make $1 ticket fare. Do you have any transit plans developed as of yet?
So we've released housing plans, we've released healthcare plans, we've released environmental plans. We have yet to release transit. The transit plans we release are going to be really focused on we're going to release an economic plan, and that's going to include transit. Transit and housing plans have to be deeply integrated. So when we've talked about housing, it's been about greater density near transit to make transit even more viable in many communities. At the end of the day, I don't want to run on Buck a Ride. I don't think Buck a Ride was ever endorsed or supported by experts. I think what the core focus has to be, and it depends, it'll be different things in different communities, but it's got to be about affordable and reliable, high quality service transportation. And what you just articulated with fare integration, that's a really important thing. In Beaches East York, we have the Danforth GO station, and we also have a Main Street subway station that's very close by, but we don't have the same integration that we should. You see other municipalities that have a VIA station and a GO station, and there should be better integration. In everything that we do, we've got to widely expand the GO network, and we've got to make sure that there's better intercity transportation, and it's got to be affordable. It doesn't have to be Buck a Ride, but it's got to be affordable. But the most important thing is high quality service and reliable service.
All right. So the beaches question is actually a good one because I used to visit that area often, and you have to get out of Main Station, walk a lot, and then go to the GO station, and you don't get any fare discounts. Are you thinking when you say integration, will there be something like a fare discount if you take?
The transit systems should be integrated, especially in a place where they they're on the doorsteps of one another. So, I mean, frankly, we should have an underground walkway between Danforth Go and Main Street Subway Station if we had thoughtful planning on that front and a level of serious investment. We need major investment on the capital side, including on transit, including on housing, and to deliver high quality and a really wide scale network. But yeah, we need fair integration, and Danforth and Maine is one example, but there are other examples as well.
Right. So one question about transit, like what are your thoughts on high-speed rail? Like I saw one study that said like we have more people in southeast Ontario than 4 provinces, like Manitoba, Alberta, BC, and one other, Saskatchewan. So, someone who lives in Hamilton, it will take them by train 5-6 hours to go to Ottawa, and there seems to be a lot of market for high-speed transit here. I know Minister Al-Ghabra, when he was the minister, he also put a couple of studies for this. Do you have any? I know you're yet to release the transit plan, but do you have any thoughts on high-speed transit within Ontario?
Well, yeah, at the federal level, I've long thought that high-speed rail as between Toronto and Montreal, and that would include a stop in Ottawa, would make a great deal of sense. And that should be a national project. Unfortunately, and I say this as a federal liberal, but the federal government is not moving forward with high-speed rail. We are moving forward with high-frequency rail, which, yes, it is going to make things a little bit faster getting from Toronto to Ottawa, because you're not going to have, you're not going to have the freight passenger rail to compete with in quite the same way. Having said that, it's not going to be so efficient and so fast that it's going to make sense to, for example, not take Porter or not take a short haul flight. If you want to get from point A to point B, from Toronto to Ottawa in the fastest way, a flight's still going to be the fastest. I think it's unfortunate that we aren't as forward thinking on this file. I know it's going to be really expensive to build high speed rail. I know that. It's also going to be really expensive to build high frequency rail. High frequency rail is not going to displace short haul flights in the same way that high speed rail would. Now, does it make as much sense to build high speed rail between, for example, Windsor and Toronto, the way that the past Liberal government had talked about and looked at? I'm not so certain. So I don't want to commit, and I'm not committing right now to saying we're going to build this high speed rail within Ontario. From what I've seen, the network that would make the most sense is Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal.
Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. Okay, got it. So we had a couple of questions about actually cost of living, and it's something that's on everybody's mind. In Ontario, we had the fuel tax subsidy. Premier Ford removed the licensing fee that we do for cars. But at the same time, utility costs are rising, our gas bills are rising. Part of it is related to the carbon tax. Now, you're a federal MP, but you're running for the provincial. So I want to know, is there any targeted reliefs that you're thinking of, or how do you want to address this cost of living issue on a provincial level?
Yeah, so on the first thing I would say, I certainly welcome ideas on this front, and if people have suggestions, please let me know, because I think that overwhelmingly when we look at cost of living, the greatest cost is housing. And so we have a very ambitious housing plan that isn't going to solve the housing crisis in the immediate term. It isn't going to solve interest rates, which is a federal, the Bank of Canada is responsible for, but it is going to focus on building homes, making sure we have supply that is keeping pace with demand in a more serious way, and is going to ease some of the pressures, especially on the rental side, and looking at people who are looking at buying their first home, and it's wildly expensive. So there are many things the provincial government can do on the housing file to, in the medium and to long term, ease some of those pressures. Otherwise, we of course need greater competition. You look at grocery stores as an example, and you look at there's a strike right now that Metro. I was on the picket line with Metro workers not so long ago at Danforth and Victoria Park, and workers' pay is not keeping pace with inflation, and yet we see record profits from some of these companies. And the provincial government has a lot to say around making sure we look at the quality of benefits that workers are receiving and the pay that workers are receiving. So we have to look at making sure that workers are benefiting from the overall economic growth that we see in this province, and that economic growth isn't just benefiting a small number of people and the wealthiest few. Otherwise, I'm wary of some initiatives, and you mentioned the license plate fee.
Right.
That to me was a giveaway in advance of an election. It costs $1 billion a year to the taxpayer to give that away. And it was not means tested in any way. So people who are very wealthy also receive that benefit. I think that's a very poor use of taxpayer money. And it's going to help some people on the low end, but it's not going to help nearly enough people. And it's really giving money away to a lot of people who weren't in the same kind of need. And with $1 billion a year, imagine what we could do with $1 billion a year to invest in nurses. Imagine what we could do $1 billion a year to look at ODSP and OW, people who are struggling to get by, and we could increase the benefit for people with disabilities who are really struggling right now. You know, we've got to have a lot more imagination and creativity when we use taxpayer public dollars. We have to be much more serious and thoughtful and creative in how we're using them, and not just giveaways before an election cycle. The last thing to say on energy, because you mentioned the carbon tax, people should know the federal price on pollution, there is a rebate. Okay, it's called the climate action incentive. So 90% of all of the taxes collected through that price on pollution are redistributed through a rebate back into people's pockets. And 75% of families, and that's almost every family in Beaches East York, except for the wealthiest few with the largest homes, right? You know, and that own 3 cars. The vast majority of people and families are receiving more or equal to what they're ultimately paying in the carbon tax. And so it's able to change behavior because it's an upfront price, but people are able to be, they're benefiting with a rebate at the end of the day, so they are not worse off. Now, I think that's pretty smart policy, all things considered. We do need to make sure we look at climate action as it relates to lower energy bills. And so an example that the provincial government could be undertaking right now, we should be really investing in cleaner electricity. We should be really investing in renewables. We should be really investing in helping homeowners with heat pumps, for example. If you had a heat pump that displaced your natural gas furnace, you would be ultimately paying a lower energy bill. It would be saving the planet. It would also be saving you money. If we helped homeowners retrofit their homes with insulation and windows, we would be saving the planet, and we would be saving homeowners money. And I think we do a relatively poor job right now, as between provincial and federal governments, at coordinating these programs to make sure we're not only delivering strong climate action, we're creating jobs, but we're also importantly lowering energy bills.
So there is, I know that some people in my neighborhood, for example, put solar panels. It's a very prohibitive cost at the moment, 30,000-40,000, pays off in maybe 15-20 years. Is there something like that you're thinking? I know the previous Dalton McGuinty government had some initiatives on wind turbines. Are you thinking of more into subsidizing these type of initiatives that let people generate their own energy?
Yeah, unquestionably, we're looking at distributed energy solutions, rooftop solar, local battery storage, making sure that there are electric vehicle subsidies on the one hand, but also making sure that electric vehicles not only draw from the grid, but speak back to the grid. So off peak, it should be pulling from the grid. Peak, it should be feeding back into the grid. And so there are many solutions we can undertake. And again, these are, in many cases, when we're talking about building new solar, building battery solutions, these are investments that are going to not only the benefits are going to accrue to future generations, but they're also benefits that are going to, and you look at building solar and building cleaner electricity, the benefits are it's not like a single year license plate fee giveaway. The benefits are going to last for many, many years. And yeah, it's going to benefit people's pocketbooks at the same time. So, I think if we operate in a space where we know it's about strong climate action to protect the planet for our kids, but we also know it's going to create jobs, and we also know it's going to lower energy bills, we are in the perfect space to deliver really ambitious action.
So I just to move on from that, because we do have a limited time. I heard one podcast you did a long time ago on regulating monopolies. It was quite some time ago. I wanted to show you a little example today that some time ago the price of bread rose first at Loblaws and then at Walmart, and then a couple of months later again Walmart raised the bread. It's a two something a loaf, and then pretty soon Loblaws raised it. We know that one of these companies was found, price fixing, and they paid a $50 million fine. It doesn't seem to be like, if I will be blunt, in the US, there was a company that was price fixing, the person went to jail. So how would we, like the when I see the interest rate go up, I still have to buy bread. And if there's no competition, it's demand supply doesn't work. So do you think the provincial premier has a role to play here?
The provincial premier does. Now, in fairness, the federal government has the greatest role to play in competition law. And so there are absolutely things the federal government can and should do to strengthen competition laws. Now, when it comes to provincial action, we should really be looking at stronger protections for consumers and making sure we increase competition, of course, in every step. There's a woman on our economic advisory table, Vas Bednar, who's looked at competition issues, including on the provincial side, and we're going to deliver on that issue. We should also be making sure that we deliver stronger consumer protections. And in some cases, we're getting taken advantage of, and I'll use an example. How many of us have subscribed to a service or product and we then pay for it, and then we go, oh, it's hard to unsubscribe. I should have unsubscribed 3 months ago. I'm paying for something that I'm not really using anymore and that I wish I wasn't subscribed to. And some companies make it incredibly hard to unsubscribe. And it can be a huge frustration and a huge headache. And it costs us money in the end. And it's inefficient and it's unproductive. And we should be making sure that in Ontario, if it takes one click to subscribe to a service, it should be one click to unsubscribe from a service. And we should have much stronger consumer protections. So yes, on both fronts, we need to put consumers first, and that means strengthening competitions. It also means strengthening consumer protections.
Okay, I see. So I'll have one last question, and then we'll discuss about membership of the Liberal Party. But the final question,
my train leaves in 10 minutes, so I've got about five minutes to go.
Okay, so the question is a little bit loaded, that housing is expensive, and you talked about building more housing. And I know that there is some hesitation in building on the Greenbelt from the Liberal Party. I'm not going to go into the Ford scandal at the moment. That will be dealt with. But in your plan, the first thing is, where are you going to build that extra housing? And second, this is also a little bit loaded. Do you think that is there a strategy to move people away from the GTA into other parts of Ontario?
Well, people are already moving out of the GTA to other parts of Ontario, and we need the provincial government to make sure we're providing infrastructure funding and support to municipalities to keep pace with that population growth. We also need to make sure that the province is helping to build housing, and that means pushing municipalities and putting strong rules in place so municipalities can't block housing. We need housing built, and we need gentle density everywhere. Toronto just now has a rule for fourplexes. We are proposing fourplexes as of right everywhere. 6 to 8 stories as of right on transit routes, obviously greater density near GO Transit and subway stations. We need density everywhere. And we have more than enough land to build that kind of density. What we don't need to do is build on the Greenbelt. And I know this because Doug Ford's own expert task force said gentle density everywhere, greater density near transit. You don't need to build on the Greenbelt. And the Greenbelt in particular, by the way, is expensive to build on. Why? Because the cost of servicing infrastructure where it isn't already serviced is incredibly expensive. Whereas if you are building density where infrastructure is already serviced, it's incredibly cost effective for the tax base. And you're improving the tax base, and you're improving people's lives, and you're improving overall economic productivity. So this government has no competence. They're also corrupt, but they've got no competence. And housing is one of the best examples. They talk about building housing, and they are not building the housing that we need.
All right. So first of all, Nate, I wanted to thank you for giving us your time. And I know that what really impressed me, because I met you when you came to Whitby, what really impressed me is that even though it's still early in the race, you have put out a lot of ideas. I haven't seen too many ideas from the other Liberals in the race. I wanted to give you a little bit of time to talk to everyone, to our audience here, and say, if they like you and many of them know you, how can they, what's the procedure if they want to get involved, and so on.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the collaborative relationship with BCCB. It's been an honor to be a member of Parliament for 8 years, but I'm convinced I can make a bigger difference on behalf of communities all across this province. And we are only going to make that difference if we win this leadership. And so to help me win the leadership, everyone needs to become a member of the Provincial Liberal Party to vote in this leadership race. You have to become a member by September 11th. And it's easy to do. You can go to meetnate.ca and you can register there. You can be in touch with us, and we'll, if you're interested in getting more actively involved, we'll get you involved, and you can sign up friends, family, and more. So here's how it works. It's free to join. Anyone who is 14 years old can join. Anyone who is a resident, you don't have to be a citizen. Anyone who is a resident of Ontario, including students, can join. The real trick, though, is you have to become a member by September 11th. So if you're interested in helping us out and getting involved, I hope you are, because the only way we beat Doug Ford and we deliver better for this province is if you get involved. And so help us out, become a member, meetnate.ca. And if you're interested in getting more involved in organizing in your community, because this isn't just about Beaches East York, we need members in Whitby, we need members in Oshawa, we need members in Windsor, we need members in London, and all across Ontario. So if you've got a family or friend in Sudbury, if you've got a family or friend in Cornwall, which is where I'm talking to you right now from, I mean, we need everyone to lean into this and encourage everyone to sign up in your family, friends, and your whole network by September 11th.
All right. So I wanted to end this by thanking you, Nate, again for giving us this time. We hope to have you again sometime in the future, and hopefully when you're also premier. But for now, take care and good luck and safe travels.
I look forward to coming back as leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.